it elicits that excitement and that curiosity. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about reading is we not only do we learn more about either the person or the story that's in the book, we learn a lot about ourselves and how we interpret what we read.
Yeah.
And so how does what we read and how we interpret it, how does that develop us maybe in our communication style and in our leadership strength?
It's interesting, Cam, because the thing I like about reading, especially for kids, is there's not a single problem a kid can have that there's not a book written about it. I mean, there's books about wetting the bed. There's books about getting bullied. There's books about not being able to speak the same language as everybody. And it's like, it's a great way of connecting. And also, I used to always emphasize, I mean, my kids were in the inner city. A lot of them had never been anywhere. And I always said, well, all you need is a library card. This is better than a passport. This is going to take you into the minds of people all around the world. And you're going to experience places and situations that a lot of people don't. And that's the power of it. I mean, the reason I read now, I think you and I read very similar books, leadership books and stuff, is I'm always looking for, well, what did this person do in this situation? How did they handle things?
Dr. Danny Brassell, welcome to the Dads Making a Difference podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me, Cam, and thanks for all that you do. You're really helping a lot of people out there. I appreciate you, my friend.
No, I appreciate that. You know, we're on a mission here to help fathers show up more confidently for their families, show up in a way that they're leading not only with their health, but their finances and their faith, but also that they can just show up every day knowing that they have a purpose. And we're trying to do that. We try to bring amazing guys on like yourself who can speak into the lives of men and really gives us something to walk away with, an actionable step that guys can take away that they can say, hey, this sounds great. Dr. Brassell said to do this right now, and they can take it in the next couple of days. So I appreciate you being here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Danny, why don't you start by just sharing with our listeners a little bit of who you are, where we find you right now, surrounded by books. I don't think you're in the corner of a Chapters or an Indigo, but, you know, surrounded by books. Like, who are you and what work do you do?
Well, thank you, Cam. If I was going to write an autobiography, it would probably be called Pivots because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist. I got to cover President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election, got to meet every editor of every major daily, and one editor offered me the job at the City Beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became a teacher for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay. And I actually fell in love with teaching, Cam. I've taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And it was about 2005 when my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything. And I could give you the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from that experience. First of all, my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer and she stuck right by me. She's pretty incredible. Second of all, I learned money's not everything because you can lose it just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people because if I was somebody who looked at what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize if you don't know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess, but the more I read the Bible, I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And fifth, I didn't want to declare bankruptcy, and my accountant said, well, you have to make this much more money this year then. And so I did a side hustle, start speaking on the side, and I hit that number right on the number. Well, then the next year, Cam, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business that attracted the attention of a lot of famous people and companies who started asking me to coach them. And I resisted for a long time, Cam, because you need to know something about me. I have a very high standard for my students. I will not let you fail. I will hold you accountable and be on your back until you succeed. And now that I work with entrepreneurs and executives and business owners, I find that they're motivated to do the work. And it's probably the most gratifying work I've ever done. So I gave you a whole bunch of different pathways. We can go whichever way you want, whatever serves the men of your audience the best.
I love it. We're going to dive into that, but I just can't help but think in the back of my head during all of this transition, these changes, I don't want to declare bankruptcy, so I'm going to start speaking and kind of double dipping. You're raising a family, right?
Yep, I got three kids, and now they're older. A 21-year-old daughter, 20-year-old son, and a 16-year-old daughter. And yeah, it's not easy. People, uh, this is what I love about this podcast is dads understand, but nobody really understands dads.
Yeah. That's good. And you have a unique perspective, and I share a little bit of this perspective with you. Um, you went in teaching for the noblest of reasons. You really did. And make $25,000 a year. But at the same time, you probably learned a lot through that experience that helped you be a father who communicated well, interact with youth in a certain way, and then interact with people in a variety of environments, right?
Absolutely. I learned probably my philosophy more than anything now is I take my job and my responsibility seriously, but I don't take myself too seriously because I ain't all that, and neither are you. And if you think you're all that, teach kindergarten for a week. Those little ones will set you straight. I once had a little girl raise her hand. I'm like, LaShonda, question. She's like, Miss Brassell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? I'm like,
Yeah.
this afternoon. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I ain't all that. And my wife and kids do a good job of humbling me on a daily basis.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Danny, that doesn't change until high school. I'm currently a vice principal of a high school. I've been in education for going into my 18th year. They'll
Nice.
say the same thing to me. They'll be like, Cam, like you missed a spot shaving or the nose hair comment or like, what are you wearing? So yeah, you get humbled really quickly. And I think it helps because you're not worried about how you show up all the time. You're more worried about how you connect and how you communicate and how you can impact people, not how you appear all the time.
I
And
love
so I
that.
can appreciate that. I'm going to dive in mostly to your experience when it does come to leadership, communication, and what that could look like in the home and what that could look like for the men who are listening to this podcast. Um, so let's dive in there first. You started public speaking. You were working about doing public speaking. What were the topics? What was the passion that you had to share when you made that transition?
Yeah, so when I work now with people on coaching them, and one of the first strategies I share with them is, well, if you're going to start speaking to audiences, you should always start with the lowest hanging fruit, and that means who are the uh, organizations that you already feel comfortable with. And so I started off as a inner city public school teacher, and so when I first started speaking, I spoke predominantly to inner city public school teachers, and then I was able to expand my niche to all public school teachers, and then teachers in general, and then parent groups, and then educational administrators. And so you can expand that. But I had started off working with teachers, and my specialty is really getting kids to love reading because I find schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I always ask people is, well, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach
Mm-hmm.
kids why to read because I've never had to tell a kid, go turn on the TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid, go read. I want them to choose to do it because they love it. And there's simple strategies I share when I'm working with parents on how to get your kids to love reading.
I love that. The importance of reading. We did that in our family. We've read with our kids, and everybody's like, okay, read with your kids from the time that they're little. And so we did it because people told us to. But what we started to see is that now my son will like hide himself away as a 11-year-old boy, and he's like reading a book, and he's not on an iPad. And my daughter's into a book series with all her friends, and I'm like, oh, why are you reading this? Well, because my friends are, but I'm really into it. And so it's cool to see that. But one of the things I've noticed, even in youth and in my own kids, is the more that they read, the more comfortable they are in communicating with other people, especially with adults. They
Mm-hmm.
can communicate fine with their, I don't even know what they're saying, Danny, when they're talking to their friends. The words that they use, the slang that they use is like something completely different to me. But their approach to having I'll say a real conversation with somebody who's older than them, it has to be what they're reading. It
Yeah.
has to come from that.
Yeah, they're getting it from reading the text. It's wonder. I mean, that's a testament to you, Cam. I mean, I used to have a nonprofit called Real Dads Read, and I used to challenge the dads. I'm like, hey, Dad, you want to know why your kid likes hockey so much? Because that's the only time you spend with them. If you spent your time reading with them, your kid would want to be a reader. Like whether we like it or not, our kids are paying attention to us all the time, both the good and the bad. And they notice everything. And so you did a great job, especially I always share with teachers 4 out of 5 of your struggling or reluctant readers are going to be boys because boys and girls are very different. I mean, girls will read books about boys. Boys don't like reading books about girls. I mean, there's always some exceptions. But I was working with a third grader named Mario, and Mario's teacher told me, Mario won't read nothing. I'm like, oh, I'll get Mario reading in an hour. And it actually only took me 20 minutes, Cam. And the book I gave Mario, he liked it so much he memorized the first chapter by the next week. The book was called Just Disgusting by Andy Griffiths, not the Sheriff of Mayberry. This is an Australian author. He wrote The Day My Butt Went Psycho. And the first chapter in the book are the 101 most disgusting things. He remembered all of them. I can't remember all of them. I can remember some of them. So it's like number 12, dog poop. Number 13, stepping in dog poop. Number 14, trying to wipe the dog poop off your shoe and getting it on your fingers. Number 15, eating a hot dog that tastes like dog poop. Number 16, realizing the hot dog tastes like dog poop because you forgot to wash your hands. I mean, that's how you get a little boy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Little Women is a wonderful book, but if you want a little boy to read it, you better put diarrhea in the title. That's how you get a boy reading. It's just very different strategies.
So, okay. I have this question as a dad too. I love to read. My daughter makes fun of me. She says I read boring books. I'm into communication and leadership development and personal growth. She's like, Dad, you need to read more fantasy, more adventure books, more fiction. And so she's challenged me to do that. But I'm committed to doing it. I'm committed to reading. But there are guys listening to this right now who they might not be readers. They might not even know where to start to pick up their next book. They're like, man, the last thing I had to read was when I was in college or university, or I went to school, or the instruction manual that my wife made me read when I put the table together. Like they're just not there. Where does a guy start? And where I'm going with this is I think there's an importance for dads to be reading so that they can then communicate with their families. So where does a dad start in his own reading journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic. I'm considered one of America's leading reading ambassadors because I grew up hating reading. My father was a librarian, and I always hated the public library. It always smelled funny to me. The furniture was uncomfortable. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There's always a freaky homeless guy by the bookshelf thinks he's a vampire. I always hated the library. It wasn't until I started teaching in the hood and I saw a lot of my kids didn't have the advantages I had growing up, where I basically said, shame on me. I mean, I was blessed. Both of my parents were in the home, and I mean, we were poor, but we always had food on the table. And my parents always read in front of us kids and to us kids, and we had access to books. I mean, I see so many simple fixes that we could make in education, but people won't have the discussion. I mean, I completely empathize with the guys out there that don't consider them readers, because that could have been me. I mean, I remember in high school, I had an English teacher, and she made us read the Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And no offense to the people that love Nathaniel Hawthorne out there. Basically, the book is about Hester Prynne. She commits adultery, so she's forced to wear an A on her chest. And I raised my hand in class one day and I said, may I wear a B on my chest because I'm so bored reading this book? And the research is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. I tell this to parents all the time. The little boy who only reads Captain Underpants is going to become a better reader than the little boy who refuses to read anything. Captain Underpants is the gateway drug to Shakespeare, but you got to get the kid hooked first. Those guys that have trouble, I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was teaching second grade, I had a little boy named Kiara, and Kiara came into my classroom one day, and he's like, hey, Miss Brassell, you see Barkley last night? He had 18 points and 16 boards. I'm like, thank you, Kiara, because from that day forward, every day after lunch, Cam, I put Kiara on my lap. We sat there and read the LA Times sports page together. And guess what? By the end of the year, he's one of my best readers. And so I guess the practical strategy for dads is to read whatever you want to read. If you like reading the sports page, that's reading. we're using definitions of reading that are 75 years old. I was with a fourth grader, and his teacher told me he couldn't read. I mean, Cam, in 1 hour, the kid must have sent 20 text messages. He was sending email. He was surfing the web. He's highly literate. He's not reading a physical book, but he's highly literate. One thing that your audience can do. So I love that you established habits with your kids when they were little. When my kids were little, I have a feeling television's here to stay, and I don't want to keep the kids from watching television. And so I established the habit. So the rule for my kids is before they turn on the TV, they have to bring me something to read. And so when they were little, they'd bring me picture books, and I'd read the picture book, and then they could turn on the TV. Now they're older, so they'll bring me their iPads, and we'll read like a news story or something. Another strategy is I have book dates with my wife and three kids. So my oldest daughter, she's into Game of Thrones, and so we're reading Fire and Ice, Fire and Ice by George R. R. Martin. I'm not thrilled with the language and some of the situations in there, but I have to practice what I preach, what he's into. My son loves anything with wars, and so we just saw the movie Master and Commander, which I love the movie, so I got the book Master and Commander, and I never knew how stupid I was, Cam, until I started reading that book. I have to get out a dictionary 4 times a page because it's written in Middle English, all these nautical terms and things. And then for some reason, my youngest daughter, she likes literature, and so I have to read The Great Gatsby to her, which I hate that book. It's just, just hate it. I mean, I guess the good thing about reading it to her is that I now understand that F. Scott Fitzgerald, he knows how to write. He's a good writer. I just hate the story. I hate the characters. I've always hated the story. And then my wife and I were reading this series of books by Beth Brower called The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, which is about this woman and her three guy friends in Elizabethan England. And it sounds totally lame, and I'm actually totally into it. It's actually a really enjoyable series. And so that's one way, to really connect when you're talking about your daughter's like, I got to do fantasy. Well, find a book together and read the book together. And that way, it's just an extra bit of time with your daughter because they grow up very quickly.
Yeah, fast, really, really quick. My son just turned 11.
Nice.
And my wife and I were just like, wow, that happened really quick. And then my daughter's 13 going on 18, like most 13-year-olds. And it just went so quickly. But I see how they've grown. But I've also seen how my wife and I have grown as parents throughout the journey. So it's been exciting. It's a fast transition for sure.
Good.
So when we're looking at creating a love for reading and creating a love for reading for the purpose of enjoyment, for the purpose of course, the educational side of it, but the purpose of development, where does that passion come from? Can we instill passion in our kids, in ourselves, in our families, where the written word is something, like you said, either on an iPad or in a book, is something that we can prioritize. I love the example of bring me something to read before you watch TV. And I was like, well, man, if that's step one, and he said that, there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more that we can implement, little dads would call them tricks or hacks that we can get to get ourselves and our kids reading more.
Yeah, so when I was a middle school teacher, I was the only teacher in the school that none of my students were ever tardy. And the reason was I always started off class by reading aloud a Paul Harvey story. So when I was a kid, Paul Harvey would come on the radio every day at 12:15 and say, "I'm Paul Harvey with the rest of the story." And for 5 minutes, he'd read a story to you. And the story's describing a person or a company or a place. And the whole time the kids are trying to guess who's he talking about or what, and they love it. But the problem with Paul Harvey is, a lot of his stories are about like Fred Astaire and Sears Roebuck. Well, kids today, they have no idea. They're not even interested. They don't know what that is. And so I wrote a book called Leadership Begins with Motivation. And this book includes stories that are like more updated about people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But after I wrote it, Cam, it was weird. I read it and I'm like, completely unintentionally, most of my examples were of white male Americans. And so the last book I wrote is called Misfits and Crackpots. And most of the stories in here are about women and minorities and international people. And it was the most fun I've had. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that really one of the ways that I see a lot of dads able to get their kids interested. I mean, when they're little, use dad jokes. I mean, kids like jokes. That's
Yeah.
reading. Give them jokes. Give them like a little. Here, I'll just read to you a real quick one from Leadership Begins with Motivation. It just shows you how to get kids excited about reading. So this goes. On the morning of January 17th, 1977, Gary Gilmore, in a plain t-shirt, strapped into a chair with a bag over his head, awaited a firing squad of 5 law enforcement officers to execute him at state prison in Draper, Utah. Convicted of murdering a gas station employee and motel manager in Utah the year before, Gilmore would be the first person in the United States to be executed in nearly a decade. Shortly before his execution, prison officials asked Gilmore if he had any last words. Neither he nor anyone else that day would know the impact of those words. Over 10 years later, in 1988, Dan Wyden, an advertising executive who co-founded the Wyden and Kennedy Agency in Portland, Oregon, made something of a morbid pitch to a struggling fashion company. He recalled the inmate's final words and used a slight variation for his pitch, and seemingly everyone hated his idea for the company's new slogan. Trust me on this one, Wyden implored the company's co-founder, and the co-founder, his company, and the public have not looked back since. The co-founder's name was Phil Knight. The struggling brand he co-founded was a shoe company called Nike. An advertising executive, Dan Wyden, slightly altered death row inmate Gary Gilmore's final words, "Let's do it," into the phrase, "Just do it." So these are the kinds. I mean, I read a lot of stories like these to my kids all the time, and they always act like they're annoyed by them, but
Yeah.
I've heard them share some of them with their friends. Now their friends are all excited about that. So I just think it's a great way to connect. That's the way I do it. Everybody to each his own. I mean, again, reading that fantasy book with your daughter, just being able to understand the names of the characters and the plots and stuff. That's going to be a great way of connecting with her.
Amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that. Like as you're reading that, the guys who are listening, they're probably, oh, I think I know where this is going. And then you start to doubt yourself a little bit. Like, is it? Is it Nike? Is it who I'm thinking of? So it elicits that excitement and that curiosity. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about reading is we not only do we learn more about either the person or the story that's in the book, we learn a lot about ourselves and how we interpret what we read.
Yeah.
And so how does what we read and how we interpret it, how does that develop us maybe in our communication style and in our leadership strength?
It's interesting, Cam, because the thing I like about reading, especially for kids, is there's not a single problem a kid can have that there's not a book written about it. I mean, there's books about wetting the bed. There's books about getting bullied. There's books about not being able to speak the same language as everybody. And it's a great way of connecting. And also I used to always emphasize, I mean, my kids were in the inner city. A lot of them had never been anywhere. And I always said, well, all you need is a library card. This is better than a passport. This is going to take you into the minds of people all around the world. And you're going to experience places and situations that a lot of people don't. And that's the power of it. I mean, the reason I read now, I think you and I read very similar books, leadership books and stuff, is I'm always looking for, well, what did this person do in this situation? How did they handle things? And again, I just love great story. I was reading a book last week and the book stunk, but there was one really good story and it was a marketing book. And it's this guy and he's all around the world. He's going, trying to figure out what's the next thing I can market. And he's bombing. And finally he's in Chile and he's watching these fishermen fish and they're catching a fish. And he notices there's these excess fish, this other type of fish that they throw in a different barrel and they're eating that fish. And he says, "Oh, are you eating that fish because you're getting paid to fish the other fish?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, but this is actually a tastier fish." He's like, "May I try it?" They're like, "Sure." So he tries. He's like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot better than the fish that you're getting paid to catch." He's like, "What's it called?" They're like, "Oh, it's called the bonefish." He's like, "The bonefish? That's the worst name." And he thinks about it. And so he introduces it to some of the fancier restaurants in America and Canada. And it's now the number one selling fish in restaurants in those countries. He changed the name bonefish to Chilean sea bass.
Yeah, there you go. Chilean sea bass.
And so again, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, I've been blessed with lots of great mentors who've written books: Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Jack Canfield, and John Maxwell. And I just devour everything that they've ever written. They have all kinds of great little anecdotes, and that's why I read. Is okay, if I have a situation, who else has had that situation before? Because I guarantee you, somebody else has lived through it before, and they probably handled it better than I did.
Yeah. Agreed. That's why I read. I'm like, if somebody has taken the time to put their life into this book and I can read it and learn from their life experiences and not make the mistakes that they've made, good enough for me. Even if it's like you just gave an example, if it's one thing that I can take out of this book, if it's
Yeah.
one anecdote or one story that can help me impact my life. And I encourage the guys who are listening to this to, yeah, to read for that purpose. Look for that one thing that you can really take and implement in your life or can make you a better father or a better husband or a better leader in your home. So I appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
Danny, right now, you got lots going on, but you're still a dad. And so, as a husband, as a father, what is something that you are excited about diving into right now? Maybe an area of growth you're diving into?
Well, I hired a coach a couple of years ago when ChatGPT came out. I hired a coach to teach me AI, and he was a great coach. And 2 years later, everything he's talked about is completely irrelevant because
Yeah.
AI is just advancing so rapidly. And so, what I'm challenging myself to do right now is I'm learning how to create a bot. And a lot of people just talk about ChatGPT, and I'm like, just so you know, there's a lot of different AIs out there. I mean, I use Claude to me is actually the best for writing. It does a great job of writing. There's lots of different AIs have different functions, and so that's what I'm having fun right now. And I keep on emphasizing this to my kids: is I it's ironic. A guy that's from education, I look at my kids, and yeah, it's nice that my oldest two are going to college, but I said, I don't know if college is actually necessary anymore. I think if you guys learn AI and learn how to code and things like that, I think that's probably a lot more important in today's economy. I mean, my oldest wants to be a doctor, so yeah, you should go to school for that. But I mean, the guy that taught me AI, he was a medical doctor and he created an AI because his father died of pancreatic cancer. And so he created an AI that can detect pancreatic cancer in stage 1 in men, which was unfreaking believable to me. I'm like, oh my God. Everybody always tells you the doom and gloom of AI. I was blessed. I had a guy who was into it. And so I'm like this evangelist for it all the time, telling people, oh, there's all kinds of great things. And, so there's a practical strategy for any dad. Next time you have a problem, talk to AI. How would you handle this? And I do that all the time. I'm like, okay, I just got in an argument with my wife. How can I smooth this over in a nice way that's positive and uplifting? And it gives me a better answer than I would have come up with.
Love it. I love it. I talk about AI often on the podcast, even for those simple things. I have, ChatGPT I use quite often. I have other AI tools, but just on my phone, I use it more than Google or Siri or anything else. I use ChatGPT. My kids use
Yep.
it too. And I think it's just the world that we're living in. And I think it's really cool. No, I love that. I love that that's what you're diving into right now because too often people would look at you and be like, okay, this older guy, he's an author, he's big into reading and he must be super anti AI right now, but I love that you're diving into it and that's what you're excited about.
It's a
Yeah,
tool. It's a tool. People
it's a tool.
3,000 years ago, the Greeks thought writing meant the end of civilization. What? You can't memorize it. You got to write it down.
Yeah,
People but had this argument for, oh, you're watching TV, it's going to destroy you forever, and oh, you can't use social. Oh, the internet, this is the death of us. It's always the
yeah,
same gloom. It's a tool. Oh, and the
it's a
last
tool.
time I checked, when people think AI is going to take over, last time I checked, you can unplug a computer. Just so you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until the computer understands how to plug itself in, I think we're all right.
Yeah. Danny, if someone's listening to this right now, they want to learn more about your books and the work that you do, where can they find you and where can they connect with you?
Well, as a thank you to you, Cam, and your audience for listening to me, we didn't really talk about my speaking coaching, but I would love to give everybody a free gift. If you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'll give you a well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process I take clients through on how we create speeches that create a building an impact in an audience. What it does for you is it takes the guesswork out of why do I put this in this part of my presentation and where do I put it. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you have a client acquisition tool that is a system that will get you more and more clients and help you build your influence. You can get that at freestoryguide.com. And again, Cam, I just love everything that you're doing. I think guys don't talk about anything besides sports together. And it's really important to understand, well, what are some things I can do to be a better husband? What are some things I can do to be a better father? And so I applaud you for your efforts.
I appreciate that, Danny. Danny, thank you for taking time away from your family and out of your day to spend with us. Wish you all the best and look forward to seeing more of your work come down the line.
Take care, my friend. God bless.